Hello and welcome to episode 21 of Talking Disney Magic, a show all about ranking and reviewing the biggest films in Disney and Pixar's catalog and talking about the biggest news in the House of Mouse, including Disney, Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, and so much more. My name is Adam Bankhurst and I'm here as always with the wonderful Vanessa. And this is a very, very special week because not only are you getting an early episode, but you're getting an episode that is celebrating 75 years of Cinderella. And we're so excited to rank and review it, talk about its impact, and so much more. And Vanessa, I'm kind of excited.
I'm so excited. When I've been telling people that Cinderella turned 75, people were like, she looks good for that age.
She
Good for her
does.
age. She aged. She's timeless. And I was like, you know what? She really is. She's beautiful and timeless.
She is. It's like the number, I feel like I don't really have that impact of what that number means. Like 75 years old. It's like so wild to think how long it's been around, but kind of also how short and like what has meant to Disney and to so many people. Now I feel like this probably more than most Disney movies is like so much of what Disney is and what Disney means to a lot of people and is just part of our culture from the glass slipper, from Magic Going On at Midnight, from the pumpkin carriage, from Dreams Come True, Prince Charming. I feel like so much of that is because of Cinderella. And I mean, even at Disney, like obviously you go to Walt Disney World and Cinderella's castle is right
Awesome.
there. And when you watch a Disney movie, you're greeted by a castle that's a combination of Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella's castle. I mean, she's everywhere. She really is.
Everywhere, and she's timeless and graceful, and what it means to be kind in the face of adversity, and to just no matter what life throws at you, you just keep moving forward and keep being the best version of yourself, and it was just I was asking Henry because I watched it with the kids this weekend. And Henry loved it. He watched it twice because we started it, and then Sean and I went on a date, and then he finished it with the babysitter, and then he wanted to watch it again with me.
Aw.
And I was like, "Did you like it better than Encanto?" And he was like, "Yes." I was like, "Wow, oh, okay, here we are."
Oh my gosh, that's a big statement. I like it.
Because of the mice.
Ah, yes. The mice were great.
Disgust us,
Gus and Jack were wonderful. Jacques.
It was so good. I feel like we may have some more Hall of Fame discussions in this episode.
I
Just
know it might. There's some good things here. I'm excited to jump in and talk about it. But before we get into the big Cinderella extravaganza, I do want to remind everyone that Talking Disney Magic goes live every Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for today because it's a Tuesday. So surprise. It's
Isn't
because
it
it's
a wonderful surprise to get us early in the week?
I
It's so
think so. It's
great.
pretty cool. I know Vanessa and I were discussing before the show about like news and stuff, and I'm like, we talked like a few days ago, so nothing's really happened. So it's all Cinderella this time.
All Cinderella all day long, and I think that is appropriate.
Yes, I think so. It's worthy of this big discussion. But once again, yeah, so you can check all the show notes below to find out timestamps to jump right to our ranking and reviewing of films, anything else going on that we want to let you know about. You could also check our current rankings of films. You can check out our upcoming schedule. You can check out an invite to our Discord and so much more. And there's a lot of stuff going on. We have some fun things coming up. I was looking at the schedule. Hey everybody, it's Adam and Vanessa from the future. How's it going?
How's it going? It's good. From the future to the past.
So we hope you love the Cinderella episode and everything's going great. But we did want to let you know that we were doing some planning after the show, and we found out that next week's movie, which was supposed to be Make Mine Music, is actually the only Walt Disney animated film that's not on Disney Plus. And the only way to watch it is to either spend $1,300 on the Disney collection where we base this movie on, or spend $20 on YouTube. And that's kind of a high price.
A high price for something that has 58% on Rotten Tomatoes, and also a high price for you if you wanted to watch along with us. Like from an accessibility standpoint, it doesn't feel like it's very fun or
Exactly.
fancy free. Well,
So yeah, so we're just shifting things around a little bit. So next week we're gonna be doing fun and fancy free, and we'll touch upon Make Mine Music, and we'll talk about the history and how it impacted everything. And then when Disney, if they ever decide to put it on Disney Plus, we'll do an episode and rank and review it. But for now, just to keep everything easy for all our listeners, we're doing fun and fancy free next week, and then Luca the week after. So yeah, that's about it. Enjoy the episode. Bye everybody. Cinderella, we're actually not supposed to be doing Cinderella right now, but we kind of moved it up. So we are talking about Cinderella in honor of its 75th anniversary, which, for context, the movie premiered on February 15th, in Boston. But February 4th, which is today, if
On
you're
March
listening on
4th.
Tuesday, was the wide release where everyone got to go see it. So that's kind of the way we're kind of handling it. So we are doing Make Mine Music next week, which is another blast from the past, kind of in this time, but it actually takes place before Cinderella. So there's some context that you'll hear here that will be talked about next week. And then we're all kind of leading up to Luca, and then we get Snow White. We're gonna have the live action
Again.
is here. So we're gonna be discussing that. We'll be giving you our instant reactions to Snow White. So we'd love to get your emails and your thoughts on Snow White and obviously on Luca and Make Mine Music and all that stuff too. But it'll be kind of cool because we're going to do something a little, I think, special. Like Vanessa had a good idea, like back a long time ago, where we've already ranked and reviewed Snow White. It was actually our first film. So go back and check it out. It's great. But we're going to re-release that on your feed with a new intro from Vanessa and I. So when we have these new movies, whether they be live action, sequels, anything like that, and we've already ranked and reviewed a film, we're going to kind of re-release them so you can listen to what our thoughts were then, but also have a little update. Like, what do we think of the trailers? Has our mind changed? Is there any new emails of listeners who want to get their thoughts in? So it's kind of a fun way to revisit films every once in a while because they're just awesome.
Yeah, it's fun to go back and to see if our thoughts have changed, right? Because sometimes I feel like we talked about this with Mufasa when we came out, and I was like, we could be being really hard on it. Moana 2, same thing. My husband said, you're being too harsh, you know? So it's funny to see how that will like come back around and be either, yes, we stand by what we did, which of course we did because it's set in stone, it's a tier list, you
It
know,
is.
or if like, just the flavor of the day is a little bit different, you know?
Exactly, exactly. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, like I mentioned. So please send an email to talkingdisneymagic@gmail.com. Once again, that's talkingdisneymagic@gmail.com. Just like Rose did. We got an email from a new listener named Rose from Phoenix, Arizona, who wrote in and said, 75 years? Oh, and hi. I love Cinderella, and it's why I am a giant Disney fan. I have this picture of me as Cinderella after visiting the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique at Disneyland, which I need to take Ella to. It's like literally my dream. Oh my God, I need
Oh
to
my
do
God,
this.
I want to go with Ella and Charlie so Charlie can be Prince Charming.
Yes.
And they
Oh
can
my
walk through Disney World together holding
God. Can
hands
you
and like
imagine? Oh my God.
literally steal the show. They would steal every show. It'd be so great.
Oh, I am like, I cannot wait for that moment. But anyway, sorry, Rose. But anyway, this is all about you. When I was 7, and it was just the best. I haven't watched in a while, but had to for this episode. And yep, I still love it. It's obviously an S for me. And if you don't give it an S, I may never listen again. Oh my God. She said, just kidding, but
A lot
that
of
was funny.
pressure. A lot of
Yes, a
pressure.
lot of pressure. My favorite character is Lucifer because I can't get enough of his chaotic energy. And I also think I can change him for the better. Never give up. Thanks all.
I love the hope that you have, Rose. I love the hope that you have.
Oh my God, it's so funny. Yeah, that's Lucifer was such a funny character because I feel like he was very evil, but like there's something in there. Maybe not as evil as the stepmothers and step sisters, but I'm glad that you think that you have hope. That's what this week is all about. So we love it. Rose, thank you so much for writing in and sharing us your story. And we'll definitely update you once we finally make our dreams come true and go to the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique and we'll have to compare pictures.
We would love to see your picture. Yeah, compare pictures. Everybody can send your Bibbidi Bobbidi boutique pictures in and we can all do a collage. Be so
I
great.
think that automatically enters you into the Talking Disney Magic Hall of Fame if you send in your Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique picture.
I also think maybe that could be our next giveaway. Send in your photo and we could do something fun.
Oh yeah,
We haven't
definitely. I
figured
like
out
that.
what we're giving away yet, but that's
Yes.
next. Our next giveaway will be something.
Yeah, don't sweat the details. We'll fill in it all the
Figure it
rest.
out. Yeah.
But yeah, that was our big email. So thank you, Rose, and we'd love to hear more from people in the future on all this stuff. It's so exciting to read emails and have our community be a part of the show. And we usually talk about news, but like I said, Vanessa and I talked just a few days ago, and it was the weekend, so there's not much to talk about this week. So we're really going to focus on Cinderella. But I know we did want to touch that Daredevil is coming tomorrow, and I know someone on
Yeah.
this podcast is a little excited.
I am so excited. I've been watching all like the previews and stuff, and I was just like, oh, this is gonna be so great.
So yeah, well, I think we'll do some kind of coverage of it. I don't know if it's going to get its own thing or maybe at the end, maybe we could do it and we'll do updates throughout the season. We'll kind of discuss, but I was kind of thinking it's going to be kind of the reverse of Captain America because Vanessa obviously watched Daredevil and I have not seen really any of it. I think I watched like clips here and there, but my last big Daredevil encounter was when Ben Affleck was Daredevil, so it's been a while. So I'm
A
excited to jump
long
in.
time out.
I know it's a long time, but it obviously looks really, really good. So I'm gonna maybe go in fresh, and Vanessa will have a little more knowledge. So we'll kind of have some breakdowns of it too, because hey, Marvel's Disney, so it's fair game.
Fair game.
But yeah, this but like I said, we there's not much else going on, so we're really gonna spend the bulk of this episode on Cinderella, and I think it's time to jump back to 1950, which was 75 years ago, Vanessa. I don't like this. But it's
That feels like not possible.
no, it's not possible at all. And so this movie is obviously so special to the film. Everyone knows the story of Cinderella, who grew up, had a beautiful life, but then she lost her parents, and the stepmother came in with her evil stepsisters, and the iconic thing of the fairy godmother comes in, and everything happens. Her dream comes true. She gets Prince Charming. They live happily ever. Blah 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 blah. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that Cinderella kind of saved Disney. It was a very interesting story. So, not only are you getting this Talking Disney Magic episode of Cinderella, but if you go to IGN.com today, you're going to find a big piece from me that's a 75th anniversary retrospective about Cinderella. I got to speak to a bunch of people at Disney. I did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos, and like learned about the story of Cinderella. And you can learn so much more, which is it's going to be kind of a fun companion piece to this podcast. But I really encourage you to check it out to read my interviews and all this kind of stuff. But what really kind of struck me about Cinderella is, yeah, how much it really saved Disney. Because if you've been listening to our show, you'll know we touched upon all these older movies like Pinocchio and Dumbo and Fantasia and Bambi. And all of those films, while they're beloved and people, I mean, obviously they're timeless and classic films, they didn't do very well at the box office when they launched because of the war. Because Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out in 1937, and World War II obviously kicked off in 1939, and Pinocchio was 1940. So during the 40s, all the European market basically dried up and all these international markets. So these films were losing money left and right. And this is when the US government came in and they started making, Three Caballeros and Saludos Amigos and these other package films we're going to get to in the next few weeks. And so basically in 1947, Disney was like over $4 million in debt, which obviously it was a lot even more back then than it is today. It doesn't sound as much today, but back then it's a big chunk. And they were really getting ready to they had to really make a decision because they were doing all these government films and other stuff, which they weren't losing money, but they weren't really making money. They were like making a little back here and there, but that wasn't what Disney was all about. So there was this big meeting between Walt Disney and his brother Roy, who was the CEO of the company at the time. So Walt Disney basically said of the time this was one of their biggest fights because Roy was obviously a bit more focused on the financials and more realistic, and Walt obviously dreamt big and all this kind of stuff. So Walt basically said, I wanted to get back into the feature field, but it was a matter of investment and time. Now, to take and do a good cartoon feature takes a lot of time and a lot of money, but I wanted to get back. And my brother Roy and I had quite a screamer. It was one of my biggest upsets that I regret, but I said, we're either going to go forward, we're going to get back to business, or I say, let's liquidate and let's sell out. So there was a time where Disney may have just sold all their shares because the company was public at the time and kind of went off into the sunset, which was kind of a
That's
wild thing to hear Walt say.
insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's like it's you don't really think of that, but like Walt maybe was ready to just walk away.
Well, and it's so interesting because it feels like one of those pivotal things where if he had done that, like what would the world look like? We wouldn't have Disney, we'd have something else because
Yeah,
obviously he's a dreamer. But it would not be what it is today. And who knows what the animation market would look like because the investment here is what spawned and created all the inspiration for, Universal and all the other Paramount, like all of the other studios to pick up and start spending money in the same space. So just that's wild.
yeah, that was like such a crazy quote to hear. If that like is a quote from Walt himself, which I was like, man, that's wild to think they were thinking like, yeah, maybe because Walt had a bunch of failures before this from Laugh-O-Grams and some other companies that he ran. So I mean, he wasn't like a stranger to failure. Obviously, he never found the level of success with Disney, but this time, I mean, it was really rough for them and it was very difficult for them to do stuff. So Disney Walt eventually convinced Roy to do one more feature film. Like this was going to be they were going to put all their marbles on this and they were going to make it happen. And if it didn't work out, like Disney probably would have, their animation studio probably would have been done, like closed. Like we had this about that he was going to walk away, but if they made this film and if it didn't work out, that probably was going to be it, which is kind of crazy. So once again, we're going to get into more details of the story of Cinderella, but I just wanted to do that context to be like, this story is so much more, I think, powerful and wild than you might even realize because when you think of Cinderella, you think of how important it is because of the story and the characters and the moments, but there's so much behind the scenes that makes it even more so, which kind of blew me away a little bit.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, you, as children of the, 80s and 90s, we don't we take it for granted, that it just was always going to be this way.
Yeah.
And I think too, in general with history, when you think back and you look at these pivot points, the sliding door moments where people choose to walk through the door instead of closing it behind them, like those moments are so pivotal. And I think sometimes we gloss over that these happen because it's easier to just be like, well, they made that choice.
Yeah.
Hindsight's 2020, but they could have made a different choice. And it just shows their courage and the tenacity of Walt and his willingness to just go to the mat for what he believed in, even when failure was probable, more probable than not, right? Like
Yeah.
this was like they're betting the farm. And if it doesn't work out, like farm's gone, but they're willing to do it because they have that core belief in what they're doing. And it just shows again what a canny businessman Walt was. Maybe not a businessman per se, because he had so many, failures, but his entrepreneurship really shines through here because you have to be really a little bit on the crazy spectrum to be
Yes.
an entrepreneur and be willing to be like, yep, going all in,
Yep.
chips on the table,
Because
all the metaphors today.
yes, because from the strikes, from other things going wrong. I mean, there were so many things that always went against Walt and get went against the company and things they had to overcome. But this is another fascinating thing. Like when I talked to a lot of the people at Disney, everyone said that I think one of the big reasons why Cinderella was such a success because Cinderella kind of mirrors Walt's story a lot. Like obviously he doesn't have a big stepmother and stepsister and evil family and those things, but he comes from humble beginnings. He's kind of a rags to riches story in his own right. And he has this dream, this endless dream, no matter what his circumstances, no matter if there's a failure, if Universal steals Oswald the rabbit and gets rid of everything, he comes back with Mickey. Like he won't give up. Just like Cinderella at her lowest, she still has this hope, which eventually spawned the fairy godmother and did that. But no matter her circumstances, she kept dreaming and doing stuff. And I think that was very important to Walt, which is actually why Walt Disney actually made a version of Cinderella in 1922 for his company Laugh-O-Gram, which was the company before he started Disney with his brother. And it was like a 7-minute short. They adapted a bunch of fairy tales. And so he actually made Cinderella once. And, it didn't do so well. The company went bankrupt, failure, all that kind of stuff. But that story stuck with him. And he wanted to create a silly symphony of Cinderella in 1933, which was another short, but it ended up getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then ended up becoming this feature film. But like you could tell how much this story meant to him, and he finally got it across the finish line. But it literally took decades, which is once again another wild thing too.
Yeah, and as you were saying all those things in my head, "A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes" is playing in the background.
Yes,
I
yes.
feel like that's
Oh,
like the lyrics that are just like floating through my mind as you're telling me these things, right? Like, no, yeah, like the lyrics feel like he wrote them, like, even though he probably didn't. He had somebody else, but
yeah,
it just
right.
feels like this inspired him, right? And again, to be an entrepreneur and to work through failure, like you have to have so much hope and like a willingness to bet the farm on your dream, right?
Yep.
And that's Walt doubled down. I mean, that's just pretty much how it goes, right? And the story continues and we just take it for granted, but
Yeah.
it was not always meant to be that way.
It's true. It really wasn't. It's a wild thing to say. So once again, a lot of background. We'll get to more of this before, but I did want to kind of take a little break from the making of things to kind of just ask you, like, what is your history with Cinderella? Is this, I know we talked a little bit about you love some of the remakes and adaptations and things,
Oh
and
yeah,
I
which
think we're
we'll get
gonna
to.
let you cook for a little bit here, but what's your history with Cinderella?
Oh, I mean, like the Cinderella Castle, like it inspired me when Sean and I did our European trip back before we had kids. We went to Neuschwanstein, which is the German castle that Cinderella's castle was based on. And I never would have gone and done that if I hadn't been a Disney person and loved Disney. So 10 out of 10 recommend. It's really fun. It's an interesting and fascinating story, lots of history there. But
Did it
you
feel
know,
like Disney? Like, did you kind of
when
feel it a
you
little bit?
when you roll up, you're like, wow, this looks like Cinderella's
Yeah,
castle.
that's cool.
You're like, and they have horse-drawn carriages that can
Oh,
take
really?
the
Oh,
top and stuff. Like so, because it's up this huge hill, like enormous. I thought I was going to die because we had to run up the hill because we were running late, and we had tickets, and there was this whole thing, and I was like, I'm not gonna make it. R.I.P. Leave me here.
oh my gosh, I love that.
Um, but yeah, no cars. You have to walk or take the horse-drawn carriages and stuff. And it's just beautiful. Definitely recommend a visit if you have not. And we have art in the house of Neuschwanstein because it looks like Cinderella and it makes me really happy. So yeah, I just think as a princess now, Belle has my heart as a princess. So but I think the storyline of Cinderella and all of the offshoots and the remakes, which that I have a top three list I was going to share of the top three Cinderella offshoot stories. But it's just timeless and so classic and beautiful, and the story is and like the beats, like there's some of the movies that we're watching where like we talk about the time capsule movies, right? And it's like and you feel that it was made in this period. Cinderella could have been made at any
Yep.
point in time. It just feels totally separate, totally timeless, beautiful. The story is just spectacular. There's nothing in it that says, oh, this was a movie made in 1950. It just is so stunning. And they redid the animation recently, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, so
To
yeah, I think it was for Disney's 100th anniversary. They did a 4K restoration where Eric Goldberg, who you actually hear from in a little bit, because he was one of the guys I talked to about the film, he was in charge of this project where, yeah, they basically restored it to the artist's vision and made it, even more timeless so you can see it as kind of as it was envisioned, which is a pretty cool thing that they can do now.
yeah, yeah. So I just think that I don't know. She's just always been such a wonderful like symbol of hope and
Yeah.
optimism, American optimism, the American dream. You know, being the
Yeah.
best version of yourself. I just think that she's timeless.
She definitely is. And I don't have like the biggest history with Cinderella. I mean, obviously from the periphery with everything it means to Disney and the castle and everything is so special. And I've always loved the movie. It's not one I've watched like a million times or anything,
Yeah,
but obviously the story, it's like one of those stories I think people don't realize how like foundational it is for like all of us. Like
yeah.
it's like a given. We know the slipper and the midnight and Prince come like dreams come true and Prince Charming. Like it's just a part of our culture. I think more, maybe even more than like any movie we watched up until
To
this
this
point,
point,
like
yeah.
arguably.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot in other movies how like certain pieces of them transcend into
Yeah,
like our cultural zeitgeist. And it seems like most of the key and core pieces of Cinderella like have made that leap into our
yeah,
cultural zeitgeist, and they're touch points that we can all whenever you're talking about sports, it's a Cinderella story, the
yeah,
rag to, like it's just it goes into all different pieces of pop culture, and people want to reference like, oh, it's their glass slipper moment, or like,
yeah.
you know they Cinderella goes to the ball, the stroke of midnight, you have to make sure you get it done by then. There's just so many things where you're like, oh wow, when you think about all the new the cultural like yeah touch points that we have with it, it's unbelievable when
Yeah.
you really actually do some reflection on that.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a pretty impressive thing they were able to accomplish. And, we talked about it a little bit about this before, but Cinderella has obviously taken on a whole new meaning since my dear sweet Ella was born almost 2 years ago, because now that name obviously means so much more to me. And yeah, once we see her as Cinderella from Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, I'm gonna lose it. You're never gonna see me again. It's gonna be the end.
Melt away like wind.
Yes. So that's gonna be hilarious. But yeah, so it's a good one. So I was excited to watch it because once again, it wasn't one I watched in a long time. And I think we'll kind of just jump into our initial impressions, and then I'm gonna knock it to you or send it over to you for our countdown of the Cinderella stories, and then I think we'll jump into the rest of it. But I want to say, yeah, I mean, I loved it. It's one of those films once again that that is just, you don't realize how much you know of the film even if you haven't watched it. It just feels so a part of who you were. And I think it was beautiful. I think obviously there was a nice little dose of animals, which was great. Like, I
Mhm.
think there's so many different animation styles, from like how more realistic the people were and how fantastical the animals were in a sense. And I came to learn after the fact that they shot a whole live action version of Cinderella, which they sadly don't have like much footage from or like anything from it. But they basically shot a bare bones version of Cinderella that all the animators were able to work on, and Walt was able to like adjust, because animation is super expensive. So being like changing things mid animation or while the stories are happening is very costly. And as I mentioned before, Disney was in a lot of debt. So they had to be very economical with this film. So much of the live action was based off of real people and people acting and all this stuff. But the animals obviously weren't, because you can't make animals do all this cool stuff. So some of the animators got to be a little more fantastical and fun with Jacques and Gus and Lucifer, and where the people obviously like the faces that the stepmother makes and the eyes from Cinderella and the movements and the motion. That's because it was based off of real people. So once again, there's like a reason behind everything. But I really, really loved that. And yeah, I think, if I had to be like super critical, like I think maybe there were a few too many Jacques and Gus versus Lucifer moments where it felt like a little like felt like maybe that was a little filler. Like it was fun and seeing it stuff and certain things here and there. But yeah, I mean, overall, from the big magical transformation scene and how Cinderella is such a strong character and like such more of a person or story standing up for herself, it was a very enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I just had so much fun rewatching it because it's been a while because having boys, we watch a lot of Cars, you know.
Yes, right.
A lot of Cars.
Yeah.
A lot of Nemo. The princesses don't get as much love in this house. I think they might start getting some more love after this, to be honest, because they were just really excited. They loved it. I mean, it was Jack and Gus were the highlights,
Yeah,
right?
they were
Like they
great.
were just like, yes. I do think it was interesting. I didn't realize it was only like 1 hour and 18 minutes,
Yeah,
so it's not a long
right.
movie by any stretch, which is more common, I guess, in older films, is
Yeah.
their shorter time run times. But um, yeah, we had a whole conversation about what are credits because of the way it opened,
Oh yeah.
like why are we what is this the end? Like no, in the old movies they used to open with this, so that was really fun to like have like what do credits mean? I was like, well, you're giving people like props for the work that they did. Like I had to like think about like why are we talking about like credits?
I know, it's pretty funny.
But yeah, and then I just feel like it spawned so many of my like favorite movies of all time, like from like Cinderella. Well, there's so many Cinderella remakes out there. And I have my top three, which I was going to share.
Well,
I was
let's hear them. Let's hear them. Jump into it.
Okay, so if you're not like a Cinderella fan, or not, you haven't watched many of the offshoots, I'm gonna give you three that you must see. All right, these are like the top tier, highest S movies for me. So coming in at number three is a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray. It's just so great. Like just my 90s kid just really gets this one. It has Jennifer Coolidge in it. It's just got so many like it's more modern, high school, football team, and it's just like it feels like an American teenage movie in the 90s. So it's so excellent. And I love Jennifer Coolidge. She's
Oh, so
spectacular
great.
in everything she does. So
Timeless.
Timeless. So and it's like pen pals, as in with like cell phone text, So it's like kind of like it's a very modern take. So that's number coming in at number three. My number two, which is almost tied for number one, is Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, the Brandy version. Amazing. I mean, top notch. Can we talk diversity here? We got Whoopi Goldberg with Jason Alexander having Paolo Montalban as a baby. Like, come on. Like, the diversity is real. And then you get Brandy as Cinderella, and she's just chef kiss. Also, Whitney Houston.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's
So,
what a
like, the
cast. Oh my
music
God.
in that movie, pop it. I mean, I will listen to that soundtrack anytime it comes to town. I'm like, I'm going. I love this movie. I just can't get enough of it. Like I can listen to the soundtrack on repeat. It's just so good. I just love it so much. And Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, oh, and like Victor Garber. Oh no, it was Whoopi Goldberg and Victor Garber had Polo. Yeah, so Jason Alexander, I mean, 10 out of 10. Oh, and you get Bernadette Peters. Come on. Like it's just like literally the cast could not be better. And I mean, you gotta love some Whitney. Like it's just so great. So great. And then, my number one, Ever After. I just love that movie. Drew Barrymore has my heart. And it's just, I love the fact that it's set more like ancient times. It's kind of more fun. I love that movie. I could just watch it every day. So, not a musical, but definitely worth every minute of watching it. So that's my top three.
I love it. I wish I had some input, but I haven't seen any of them. I feel so ashamed to say.
You should watch them all because they are top tier. I mean, for reals though, like it's just so good.
Yeah, I know. I definitely, I would love to watch those. They sound so wonderful, and especially after seeing the impact of it and seeing how it's evolved and keeps being adapted, which is kind of fun because Walt adapted it himself from like a story from 1697 from an author named Charles Perrault. So there's so much in it that's like the story is just. I mean, they say that potentially the Cinderella story may go as far back to like 7 BC with like some Greek people that were telling the stories and doing things. I mean, this story has been around forever, but like you said, it doesn't matter what time it's in, that rags to riches, finding your dream come true, standing up to evil. It's applicable in any time you're in.
When all three of these adaptations are all so unique from each other, right? Like
Yeah.
there's the more modern influence of Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, so different soundtrack, but just amazing. And there was a version of Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella that had Julie Andrews in it.
Oh
So
wow.
like she was Cinderella. So
Nice.
you could like go back in time on that. But like Broadway versions, I went to see it on Broadway when it was in Columbus, and it's just like it never gets old. Never gets old. The music just like hits every time. So, but and then that compared with, you know, Ever After is kind of like the old school. It has Leonardo da Vinci in it as like the fairy godmother style. Like so it's just like a totally different take.
Yeah.
Um so it's fun to see how they play with it and how it shows up in all different ways.
That's great. Well, Vanessa, thank you for sharing. Everybody, watch those movies.
The
Send in your
best.
thoughts. We'll do ranking Cinderella Magic in the future, talking Cinderella Magic. Send an email to talkingdisneymagic@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Cinderella, what your thoughts on the adaptations are, all that stuff. We'd love to keep celebrating this incredible princess and this incredible story. But I think it's time we jump into just a couple more behind the scenes things, and then we're going to jump into the plot and then rank and review this thing. But it's important to remember that this film, like we mentioned, was so important to Disney. There was a lot riding on it. They ended up, making it happen. So yeah, it was the huge success that Disney needed. So when it premiered in 1950, it had about a budget of like 2.2 million, and it ended up making like $7-ish million, which was a huge haul back in the day. Where when you look at like Pinocchio, that had a budget of 2.3 million, and it only made about a million, you could see like this was a big, big win for Disney. And this obviously just changed everything. And people were so excited that Disney was back doing what did best, which they did with Snow White. And this was such a big win that led to every other film happening in their catalog. It really led to Disneyland. Like Walt kind of, he was starting to step away a little bit from animation, but having the success led him to go on to that second phase where he started building Disneyland and preparing. There was a lot more merchandise, there was their music distribution, like so much spawned from Cinderella. There's not enough time in this podcast to talk about what it's done, but it hit at the right time. It was the right place, right time, perfect film, and kind of what the world needed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, thinking back to like 1950, we're post-war Reconstruction, right? Like, and everybody is trying to find their way and find hope again. And I feel like at that point in time, like it's just the right movie at the right time with the right message, right? That people can come back and you can, keep working hard and you'll be able. And I feel like it again references the American dream, right? Like
Yeah.
how we can work really hard, be a good person, and good things will come to you, and you can make what you want out of your life.
So this is going to be the perfect time for me to input part of my interview with Tori Cranner, who's the art collections manager at Walt Disney Animation Research Library. So she's basically one of the people in charge of preserving all this art and the stories of all these films. She said there's over 65 million pieces of artwork and like props and items that they take care of in the archives and in this stuff. It's just like, can you imagine? It's like
The
that's
scale.
crazy. She had a quote that kind of fits into what we were talking about. So let's listen to it right now.
Walt was very good at kind of reflecting the times, right? And so much of what we look at as Disney is kind of American cultural history as well. And I think he recognized that at that moment after the war, what America needed was hope, right? And joy. And while Pinocchio is an incredibly beautiful and amazing movie in and of itself, it's not a joyful movie the way that Cinderella is. The country also needed that idea that coming out from the ashes and something beautiful happening. And I think that merely may be why Cinderella was the right moment for the right time. And Walt Disney was very good in understanding what was going on in the world outside of the studio in order to create films that reflected that.
We loved parts of Pinocchio, but we had some issues with it, and there were a lot of things with it, and we
Yeah.
definitely kind of understand what she's talking about there. Where, yeah, like his movies are so great, but like, yeah, there's a lot of darkness and there's a lot of like interesting themes and Vanessa's patent pending acid trips that we go to in a lot of places. But, but yeah, this movie was just, I think it's what the world needed. Like there was so much darkness in the world and devastation, destruction, and this was all about hope.
Yeah. And she hit the nail on the head with the commentary around he knew exactly what the world needed at this point in time. This period of time was very much we needed more hope in that. I mean, it's relevant today, right? As you're
Yeah,
watching, like, oh, I feel some hope, and no matter when you watch it, that's kind of infused in the
yeah,
whole movie and the vibe that you get and what you take away from it is like, oh, like, okay, the world
yeah.
can't be a better place, right?
Definitely. And we're going to jump into one more clip from Eric Goldberg, who was the co-director of Pocahontas, lead animator on Genie, was the lead restorer on Cinderella. This guy is a Disney legend through and through. He hasn't been inducted yet because he's still working there and doing stuff, but he is one of the most incredible people I've spoken to and probably one of the biggest stars still remaining at the company. But he just had a little quote that I just want to input right here that we'll talk.
The big thing about Cinderella is hope. It gives people hope, that things will work out when you have perseverance, when you are a strong person. And that's its biggest message, is that hope can actually be realized.
So that quote I think is so perfect that really kind of took my love for Cinderella to another level because I'm going to also just shoot out this quote from Walt Disney who said Snow White was a kind and simple little girl who believed in wishing and waiting for her Prince Charming to come along. On the other hand, Cinderella here was more practical. She believed in dreams all right, but she also believed in doing something about them. When the Prince Charming didn't happen to come along, she went right over to the palace and got him. So I think that just sums up so perfectly why Cinderella was so special and why I think some of the best Disney movies really kind of get to that level. And it's kind of why I'm wearing Tiana's Bayou Adventure because she's another princess who they have these dreams, but it's them who kind of makes that extra effort to make it come true. Like they're not ciphers, they're not just characters in the story. They're real people that yes, they get some magical help along the way, of course, but they're also characters who are their own people and stand up for what they believe in and what's right. And I think that's once again in the times they were living in back then, that was something that they could really hang their hat on. That like we do have to rebuild. Like part of it is on us, but we also need some hope. And I think just so much of that was kind of the perfect storm that made Cinderella what it was.
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot of criticism in general around like the princesses and like some of, someone for 30 seconds and they're the love of your life and like
Yeah.
all these like things. But I do think you're right. Like Cinderella was a participant in her own rescue, right? Like she didn't sit around like Snow White and just wait for the right things to happen, and wait for her big break. Like she went and she took it. And she did have help,
We
and she
all do
did.
though, right?
We all do. Like, and I think that's part of it is, when people talk about pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and like making it very much an individual story, you're kind of discounting all the support and the help that you get along the way, even when it's not always 100% super as in your face as the help that she got. We all have a support system. We have the friends and the family that support us, that believe in us, that want us to be successful. And that kind of comes through too, is that she's such a kind human being, that all of these animals decide that they're going to adopt her and make her their family, and they decide that they want her to be successful. And that's really how any of us are successful, is the people around us really believe in us and believe that we are good enough, right? And I think that that is really on display here.
Definitely, definitely. So, yeah, those were just a fun interviews. I encourage you to check out my full interview on IGN.com to hear more from these incredible people and how much Disney has inspired Cinderella, even from little things like Elsa's big dress transformation wasn't directly inspired by Cinderella's dress transformation, but they made it a little more tailored to Elsa because she's letting it go and doing more. But like so much of Cinderella's handprint is still super strong at Disney, and it's a cool thing to hear about. So yeah, so I think that is time. Maybe we jump into our recap and talk a little more beat by beat and just see what this story is all about.
Let's do it.
So once upon a time, there was a little girl named Cinderella who lived a wonderful life. Sadly, her mother passed away, and shortly after remarrying a woman named Lady Tremaine, her father also died. After his death, Lady Tremaine began showing her true colors as she was jealous of how beautiful and perfect Cinderella was and decided that she was going to make it her life's mission to make her life awful and treat her two daughters, Anastasia and Drizella, as royalty. And we talked, a little bit about this and the rising from the ashes and doing stuff, but I just like the animation on Lady Tremaine's face and the disgust she has is just perfect. It's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, it really is. It definitely.
Just
Uh,
like you hate her instantly.
yes, and then you see the daughters, and you're
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh God, here
oh,
we go.
yeah, meanies.
Yes. No, they're like no redeeming qualities in any of these three.
Yeah, none.
So Cinderella grows up as a servant of sorts for what I'm calling them the terrible trio, and they treat her with such disdain every time they meet. Fortunately, Cinderella is filled with hope and dreams and optimism and won't be brought down by her surroundings. She also has a wonderful group of friends that just so happen to be birds and mice, which isn't the worst thing, including Jacques and Gus. It works for both parties, as Cinderella also protects the mice from Lady Tremaine's cat, Lucifer.
Rose, we love Lucifer too. He is just
Hilarious.
he's hilarious, and like that over the top animation, you're right. It just really he's great. He's
He
a great
really,
character. He's a great foil to the, and also like a great they play off each other in a lot of the
oh
scenes
yeah.
with Lady Tremaine, and how, you have like Lucifer, and he like is the one that's like nodding and like being like, yeah, get her,
And it's so funny. So, there was that one scene which is a little farther in the film, but when Cinderella goes into Lady Tremaine's bedroom and like it's all dark and like, she's petting the cat like a Dr. Evil thing. Like there's like something there. And then that's when we find out that Lady Tremaine's like, oh, of course you could go to the ball, but you got to wash the windows and you got to do this and you got to do this and you got to do this. And like the whole time, like Lucifer's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then at the end, she's like, and you'll give Lucifer a bath. And he was like, what? It's like, oh my God, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie. He's like, wait a minute. I thought we were on the same team.
So funny.
So yeah, that was wonderful. And yeah, once again, the animals is such a great thing. I mean, a dream is you a wish your heart makes, I thought was such a beautiful, perfect song for that. And they said that like the animals were so important because not only were they kind of the comic relief from the terrible, circumstances Cinderella was in, but they also gave us a way to kind of learn more about Cinderella and who she was and how she treated them and other stuff. And yeah, they were all just wonderful.
Yeah, like I think it was really awesome when like she meets, that Gus is in the trap and she's
Yeah.
gonna go and give him a little clothes and like basically give him a home, and then all the animals are like, her friends. It's just like it was just so charming,
Yeah.
and then there's so much of the music that I have like I'm just like ta-da.
Yeah.
You're just like, it's so iconic. It's so great.
It really is. So after that, we cut to the king and find out he's very impatient with his son, who and wants him to start having kids so he can be a grandfather. And I thought the dynamic between the king and the duke was just a very funny and very exaggerated, but it was they were two great characters.
Yes, it was just so funny that he just reminds me of grandparents everywhere that are super impatient for their first grandchildren,
Yep.
right? Where they're just like, like I don't care if
Yep.
they're happy about it. I want that for myself. Like, like it's like, wow, okay, like this feels very on brand. Like it's not
Definitely.
really like a good representation of that. It was
It's like I'm
funny.
not getting any younger people. Let's go. Come on.
Exactly.
So, to help in his mission to make this happen, he invites all the eligible maidens to a royal ball in hopes that the one will be there. Cinderella finds out about the ball and wants nothing more to go, and she even finds an old dress of her mother's that she wants to fix up to help make this dream come true. This is when we talked about Lady Tremaine says she can go, but then piles endless amounts of chores on her plate. However, the animals step up in a wonderful scene where they use different parts and bring this dress to life and make it even more beautiful than it was before. And kind of a fun story. There was like a working song type thing, which I think was in Enchanted. I think there's like a working song,
Yes,
but
the happy
but
little working
yeah.
dog.
So I think that was I need to double check this, but there was a cut song where Cinderella was singing and like she kept multiplying into multiple versions of herself that did all the chores and made the dress and did these things, but it got cut out. And then they kind of infused some of that into this scene, which was kind of an interesting kind of little thing. But so basically, they make this beautiful dress, and the joy doesn't last too long as Lady Tremaine reveals that a lot of the parts that they used to make this dress were from the stepdaughters, and they just get so upset and just start ripping and shredding and tearing, and it's just like, man, just when you think you couldn't hate these people anymore, this keeps getting worse.
Yeah, well, what made me really mad about this was when it was she's doing it on purpose because I've seen previously they are complaining about how they don't get anything new
Oh yeah, right.
because they've squandered all their fortunes, and so they drop these things on the floor, the
Yeah,
sash and the beads, and they're like, we don't want like this is ugly, we don't want it. And so she knows exactly what she's doing by playing on this and getting her daughters all riled up. And then, gosh, I'm looking for the quote. We wouldn't want you to upset yourselves as she ushers them out the door. And I was like, you jerk. Like, you are literally your daughters are such spoiled
oh yeah.
brats. Like, they just like make me, I was just like, wow. Like, we wouldn't want you to upset yourselves. Oh, like I just got so angry. Like as a parent, I just like it like lit a fire under me like nothing else. I just like
You're everything
spun
that's
up.
wrong
I was
with the
like,
world. Yeah, it was that was oh God, just they did such a good job with these characters and just you just love to hate them so much.
oh yeah, and I'm like Cinderella, Cinderella, and like all the songs in there. We could do it, we could do it, we could help our Cinderella. Like it just makes me like every single time I'm like, oh yeah, this makes me really happy. And then yeah, we get some more of the scenes with Lucifer chasing
Yeah.
and Jack, and it just makes me really happy. Like it's just the animation and the storytelling and like Gus being a little bit of a glutton, like it's
Yeah.
like and like trying to do it all and
I
like
love the teacup scene where like Lucifer was trying to find him and was like so excited. And then Cinderella comes in, he's like, it's, oh, it's
yeah.
so good.
Yeah, it was just all like and all the details of the house. Like this is one of the things I was like the animation of like the house, and they would
Oh yeah.
open up like the detailed like fleur de lis or whatever that
Yeah.
like, and they would hide behind different things. It was just like fantastic. It was so well done. I
And this
just
was, yeah, and that, yeah, and the anime, that like the designs and animation and look is really a big thanks to Mary Blair, who is like huge Disney legend, and she was like so responsible for, because this is kind of some of the stories. I think the one that Walt adapted was a French story, so they kept a little bit of it, but they made it a lot more exaggerated. Like if you look back at the film, the doors and halls are like super high, and like everything is very kind of exaggerated, but still realistic looking. But it kind of gives it that like dreamlike feel a little bit, which kind of really makes it something special.
yeah. I really just thought it was just so beautiful. Oh, and then with Gus, happy birthday! Like it just reminds me of was it Ella that was yelling at
Oh
or
yeah, Ella,
happy
yeah.
birthday
Instead of
instead of happy Valentine's Day, happy
happy
birthday!
birthday. It's so great.
I
So
literally was like, oh Ella, you're here.
yes, it's making it happen. It's great. So yeah, so the dress gets destroyed, and the terrible trio leave for the ball as Cinderella is inconsolable. She runs out into the garden in tears, and at what is seemingly her lowest, she is greeted by the fairy godmother, who says there's still hope inside of her, and this is what help brings her to life. And this is when we get probably one of the most iconic scenes in entertainment, I'd say, where,
Yeah.
where fairy godmother Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo turns everything, turns the pumpkin into a carriage, turns the mice into horses, which I thought was hilarious. How Major, the older horse, didn't become a horse; he became the coachman. Then Bruno turns into the footman, and they have all this beautiful moments of magic happening. And this is what I love too. I think the fairy godmother is so special because in earlier versions she was a bit more regal, but in this version she's like very stumbly and bumbly and like a little unsure of herself. And like I think that makes her even more relatable and lovable.
Yeah, she just feels like a grandmother,
Yeah,
right? Like that's kind of the vibe that she gets is like she's just wanting, and I think when I saw the animation in her face, it feels very similar to like the Sleeping Beauty 3
oh
uh
yeah, oh
like
yeah,
the
yeah,
just the style of
right,
how she shows up. So I think that this inspires a lot of future Disney fairy godmother type
definitely,
figures. But yeah, I felt like they made her really accessible, right?
yeah.
Like, in my mind, she could be any grandmother or like, loving figure in your life that is going to try to help you and give you a leg up so that you can like be successful and get where you want to go, right? Like it just felt very accessible.
Very, very much. And of course, we get the grand finale where she transforms Cinderella and bestows upon her a beautiful gown and glass slippers, but also warns that the magic will be gone at midnight, which I think is another just special thing where once again, the whole dream isn't coming true. It's still going to be on you a little bit. And I think that puts like it puts a little more weight and kind of like a little more tension into like what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Well, some of the lines in here from her, from Cinderella, like she just wants approval and to like belong so badly. Like when she was doing her dress and she can't help but try. Like she's just like, isn't it so beautiful? And like, don't I look great? Like she just wants them to so badly like approve of her. And in the same way, the same thing happens with the fairy godmother, but she says, more than I'd ever hoped for. I'm just so grateful, even just for a couple hours,
Yeah.
right? Like,
How special is that?
right? Like, just to be like, this is more than I dreamed of, more than I could have asked for. Just the grace in which you accept the parameters and she's just like, yeah, I can live with this. It just makes it so
Night and day from the stepsisters. It's just like
right. Gratitude and how we all wish that we could be sometimes. Sometimes it's not, we don't always act that way. We're a
right.
little bit, it's never enough, but it just makes my heart every time I'm like, she's just such a graceful and wonderful human being, right?
Yes, 100%. And so this scene obviously is so iconic, but the dress transformation in itself is actually who's Walt's quoted himself and other people have quoted as Walt's favorite animation of all time. Like this was the one. And Vanessa, I just shared something with you if you want to take a look at it. And also, I just encourage you to check the show notes below because I have a link to basically a test footage of this scene. And as you're watching it, so when you pull it up and you watch it, you'll see everything happen and the sparkles come around and the dress changes and all this stuff, and everything falls right at the right time. And there's even like a fraction of a second, which Tori kind of mentioned to me. It's kind of hard to, it's like not super long, but before everything falls out, it's kind of like a breath being held and then releasing when all the magic basically happens. But not only is this scene so beautiful and like once again one of the most timeless and gorgeous scenes, and I'm so thankful we have the 4K restoration and it's so beautiful. But you have to remember, like, if you look, every single sparkle had to be hand animated. Every single like
Yeah.
star and shine and the way it circles and the way it drops and the way the dress moves, literally every single one of those. There was no computer help with like back in this day. This was all done. Character animation was by Mark Davis and the effects were by George Rowley. So it's like these two people. I mean, I can't even imagine how long this must have taken, but it's so seamless and so perfect. And it's just so representative of what Disney magic truly is and why this is so special. Because it's incredible when you see what work and what made into it. It's absolutely incredible.
It like I was looking at the video and it's like as she's moving with her dress and twirling, like the dots appear and reappear in different spots, and it just like
Yeah.
twinkles and shines, and it's just like wow, like the level of effort and detail that went into making this so beautiful is so high.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's really super special. So I definitely encourage people to check that out. But once again, this magic moment is happening. They're on a clock, so they rush off to the ball. And the prince instantly falls in love with her. They dance the night away. They explore. Everything's good. You know, the terrible trio like think there's something familiar about this person, but they don't like really know what's happening. And unfortunately, all good things must come to an end as the clock is about to strike midnight, and she must run away, but not before leaving a slipper behind.
Yeah, and it's like when they're doing the animation, one of the comments that I made was they're playing the king sees that this is happening, and the Duke is narrating this story of like it's a beautiful fair. Oh, where's the note that I made? It's like pretty plot for fairy tales, but doomed for failure.
Yes, right.
It was just like, very funny. Like, and he's narrating the whole story, and then the king is like, play the song, and they cut to the conductor. The name of the song says, "So This Is Love," and that's the
Yep.
name of the song that they're playing, and then they start humming and singing, and it's just like, oh, so good. I just can't.
Really,
And,
really
and the
special.
the part that makes this so special is that there's multiple references to the fact that she doesn't know that he's the prince.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Very
Yeah,
true.
she doesn't know that he's the prince. She just thinks that, he's somebody else. And so it's just another way that it's not her, it doesn't feel like a power grab from her because
Yeah.
he's not. He's just someone that I met and it's so wonderful. And the dancing in the garden is just so iconic, and the spinning and the twirl. And it's just like, oh, like in every Cinderella remake, my top three, they all have some form of this dancing in the garden. And it's just so, oh, it's iconic.
Yeah, and so, speaking of Mary Blair again, so there was a scene that she kind of drew and animated, and there's concept art of stuff. And I think they may have even animated some of it, but it was going to kind of get a little more ethereal and dreamlike where they were going to be dancing in the clouds and it was going to be stars all around them and it was going to be kind of them, having this moment together. But that part was cut. But it actually reappeared in Sleeping Beauty, where there was a similar scene of Sleeping
Yeah.
Beauty and the prince dancing in the clouds, and that was directly from this that they ended up putting in there that they cut out of here. But once again, I encourage you to check out some of the art if you see, because it's like, oh man, it's so gorgeous. But if what they had there was also just as beautiful, just in a different way.
And I love how like the clock strikes midnight and like she just like runs away. She's just like, I got my time.
Yep.
I don't even need to know your name. I had my 2 hours in the
Not
sun and
taking it
I'm
for
out.
granted.
It's enough for me. I was like, wow, like okay, bye. I don't even know your name. Just gonna leave. See you later.
Yep, exactly. But luckily, she left a slipper behind. And this set off the big search throughout the kingdom because the prince won't settle for anybody else. And so they go around the kingdom to try to find a perfect match. And when they finally get to Cinderella's place, Lady Tremaine finally figures out what's happening and tries to lock Cinderella in the attic. And while the stepsisters are failing horribly to try to get the slipper on, Jacques and Gus steal the key, rescue Cinderella while the birds and Bruno help scare Lucifer away. And this is when we get another really special scene, which Eric touched upon in our interview, is that when she tries to get the shoe, Lady Tremaine just trips the Duke in one final act of evilness, just trips the Duke and the slipper shatters. And it's like, oh man, all hope is lost. Can't believe this is all going to end here. But once again, Cinderella is the hero of her own story. She kept the slipper safe, kept it, and she was the one who said, hey, look at me, I got another one. And this is when all is well. It's a perfect fit. They get married, they kiss, they live happily ever after and Cinderella has been etched in stone, and that is the tale of this wonderful story.
I love how Gus is just her ride or die.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's just so many things where it's like, I just love all of there's so many details and so much stuff that just makes this such a wonderful and beautiful tale. But, she inspires such loyalty from those she loves. And I think that that is really a beautiful part of this is too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So that's Cinderella, and I think it might be time to get to our big ranking and reviewing of this film. And it's once again, it'll be an interesting one. We're getting kind of at 21 films, it's getting a little harder to kind of place them in certain places and do this stuff. So this will be kind of interesting. But as it stands at Talking Disney Magic, we rank every film from an S, A, B, C, D, and F. As it stands right now, The Lion King is the top of the list at S, followed by Moana and Snow White. In A, we have Bambi, Elemental, Strange World, Saludos Amigos, and Encanto. In B, we have Turning Red, Lightyear, Inside Out 2, and Fantasia. At C, we have Moana 2, Wish, Dumbo, Pinocchio, and Mufasa. And my dear sweet Three Caballeros are all alone in the D category. We love you, we're sorry. But that is our current rankings, and I think it's time to find a place for Cinderella. So I think I'll kick us off this time. And this might be one of the trickiest ones because not so much where it's going to be, but where it's going to end up. Because I do think this film is an S. I think
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think there's an argument there. I think it's an interesting one because at first I'm like, there's some things that maybe isn't perfect or like maybe it's an A, but like there's so much in this movie, like I said before, that is just a part of who we are. It is like a culture. It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to think of where I want to put it. And
within S, to be clear.
Yes, within S. Correct.
I'm in the same boat. So let's hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So we're going to try to narrow it down between Lion King, Moana, and Snow White. I love Snow White. We love so much of what it was. And I think this is kind of an evolution in a sense from Snow White. And, Moana just, oh God, I can't say enough good things about Moana. Every time I watch it, it just takes my breath away, which how beautiful it is. I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be Lion King for me. So I'll talk to that. I mean, that movie means everything. But it's tough because I think my heart of hearts has Moana a little higher as like music and story and just moments that like literally take my breath away and make me emotional and do stuff. But if it were doing cultural impact, like it's probably maybe even more than Lion King. But I think if I had to put where I think my heart of hearts is right now, and I could be swayed, I'm in between Moana and Snow White.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think that's exactly where I landed too. As we were talking about, like, as you started listing out who was in the S, I was like, all right, I don't think that this beats Moana for me and especially knowing that it's like, the number one streamed thing on period.
Anything.
Period. Like not even like on Disney, just full stop. Like that's what it is. And I think that it just speaks to us and the music and the storytelling and the love that there was obviously was in there. I think it doesn't beat that for me, but I think it definitely goes above Snow White for me because as we talked about, Snow White is such a beautiful film. Again, a timeless quality about it, but she doesn't really do much to participate in her own rescue. And I think that having Cinderella do that and overcome all this adversity and with the support and everything else that she had, I just think that story to me sings more.
100%. Well, hey, we're right in the middle. I love it. It's great. We don't have to argue too much after this, but I think that is kind of a perfect place for it. Like I said, if we had to rank what it did for Disney, probably would be top of the S, but I think still having it in third place behind Lion King and Moana and right in front of Snow White feels feels really great for what it is, and an honor well deserved.
Agreed.
So yeah, so right now our S looks a little different. We have a new entrant. So we have Lion King, Moana, Cinderella, and Snow White. And we're gonna see kind of what it shakes out in the future and what's gonna go there. And I don't know. Well, I was looking at some of the upcoming ones. I don't know if there's any S's coming out, but you never know. We might be surprised. But it's an exciting thing when we get a movie of this scale and be able to talk and celebrate about what it means to us, to the world, to Disney. And there's just what a story this Cinderella
Yeah.
has inside
He
and
is still
out.
the loneliest letter.
I know. It's true. It's
Loneliest letter
true.
down there. Sorry, you didn't get a new friend down there, but
At least there's three of them. They have each other.
right. Yeah, I just think that you can't overstate the impact of Cinderella. I think
Yeah.
just like with Snow White, where you can't overstate the impact of Snow White. I think this is another one of that category where they're kind of in a league all of their own of the impact
Yeah.
that they had
100%.
and the wonderful history that they bring to the table and how they shaped our culture and the Disney that we know and love today, right? Without either of those movies, we wouldn't be here. So I
Yep.
think you can't overstate that. And yeah, from a storytelling perspective, you need someone wants some fall in love. Like there's so many things where it's like, there's some problems with some of that, but
We
it
only
doesn't it doesn't feel bad.
right.
Like there's some people that make it out to be like this huge thing where you have these unrealistic expectations of what the world looks like and like feminism and all that stuff. And I don't feel that way when I
Right.
watch this movie. I like some people may, and that's okay, but for me it doesn't feel inauthentic.
Yeah.
Right? And like, oh, they're just doing this it feels like authentically who she was, and like it could happen that way. Some people it does, right?
Yeah.
And I think it gives us something to aspire to find love like that.
100%. And like you said, it's so much of why, like I said, we place it where it is because she steps up at the right moments and she has like I said, it's even like little moments like when they're having the talk and like the girls are celebrating or they're doing having their music lessons and like she has this like little
Terrible
joke and like
singers, by the way.
I
Terrible
know,
singers.
terrible. And like she has this little snarky comment. It's like it makes her into a real character and someone who's like, yeah, that's she's a participant in her story. And I think that's what makes it really so special.
Yeah, like the snarky comments about like because Bruno's being mean to Lucifer and
Oh
his
yeah.
memes, and she's just like, you have to find something. I mean, and then she goes, I guess there got to be something good about it. And we'll find something, eventually. Like Rose said, there's hope for him yet. Like
Hope for Lucifer, we believe.
I feel like we need shirts that say that hope for Lucifer.
Yes, definitely. Oh, so great. Oh, I love it so much. Well, Vanessa, do you have any final thoughts on Cinderella before we sail off into the sunset?
No, I think it just needs to be a reality that Charlie and Ella, man, in
Oh
their
my God, yes.
outfits. Someday we'll make
It'll
that
be
happen.
so great. I cannot wait. But yeah, so that's it. We have a brand new S at Talking Disney Magic, and we're so thankful for everyone coming along for this journey. And we'd love to continue to hear your thoughts on Cinderella and what it means to you and everything else like that. And I do once again want to encourage you to check out my full retrospective on IGN.com because there's going to be artwork and stories and more stuff about what makes this film so special. But once again, send an email to talkingdisneymagic@gmail.com to be a part of the show. Check the show notes below to find timestamps, to find our current rankings, our upcoming films, and so much more going on in the world of Talking Disney Magic. And if you happen to love the show, which we hope you do, we'd love you to share it with a friend or to review it because it really helps us so much and helps other people find us so we can help build this Talking Disney Magic community and do even bigger and greater things. And we just can't, once again, thank you enough for just being here, for writing in, for even just listening. No matter what, it means the world to us. So thank you all so, so very much. And, I think that's really the point where I get to say, we
Yeah.
hope you have a great day and or night and an incredible week. And we will see you for Make Mine Music. Bye, everybody.